I had always believed I could control many aspects of my life: loneliness, heartbreak, even my own desires. But on that day, I realized just how much had slipped through my fingers. I must admit, this story marks the start of the most tangled and forbidden chapter of my life. As I share what happened, my heart races and my breathing quickens. This isn't just a confession. It's a story of how a woman can lose herself in solitude, passion, and complicated emotions. I'm 53 years old, and people are often surprised when they hear my age. It's been a decade since I divorced Edgar. We separated because he was unfaithful, and to this day, I still don't fully understand why he betrayed me. I've always carried myself with poise, elegance, and a presence that turns heads. I've cherished the feeling of being noticed, of standing out. But the last 10 years of being alone have left a void inside me. No matter how strong I appear to others, when I lie in bed at night, the emptiness becomes inescapable. That morning, I was getting ready to meet my friend Emma for coffee. Like me, Emma is also divorced. She's a sophisticated woman, trying to find her way after her marriage ended. I chose a miniskirt that showed off my pale legs and paired it with a light blouse. As I caught my reflection in the mirror, I gave myself a faint smile. "I'm still beautiful," I whispered softly, as if to reassure myself, a truth I often needed to remind myself of. When I met Emma at the cafe, our conversation, as usual, revolved around memories from the past and the gaps in our present lives. We talked about the silence that filled our homes and the disappointments we had faced in relationships. As Emma spoke animatedly, my attention wandered to the window, and I noticed a familiar face outside. It was my nephew, Carlos. Carlos, now 24, is full of energy and always cheerful. Although we don't meet often, he has always been kind and respectful toward me. But on this day, he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was someone who immediately caught my eye. Tall, broad-shouldered, and almost sculpted in appearance. This man was impossible to overlook. Later, I would learn his name: Felipe. At 27, Felipe wasn't just strikingly handsome. He carried an undeniable presence that left an impression. When Felipe's eyes briefly met mine, my heart skipped a beat. It was a feeling I couldn't admit to myself, something stirring deep within. Carlos came over to greet me with his usual easygoing manner. "Aunt Mia, if you need anything, just call me," he said with a warm smile. His words made me smile faintly in return, but I couldn't ignore the way Felipe looked at me. His gaze wasn't just polite, it carried something more. I tried not to dwell on it. When I returned home, I found a large box waiting at my doorstep. It was the TV and home theater system I had ordered online the week before. But as I stared at its size, I realized there was no way I could set it up on my own. A pang of frustration hit me. But then I remembered Carlos's offer. "Call me." Reaching for the phone, I dialed his number. When I spoke to Carlos, I learned that Felipe was with him. "We'll come together," Carlos said, and an unfamiliar excitement surged within me. If I claimed I didn't want to see Felipe again, I'd only be lying to myself. By the time the doorbell rang, my heart was already racing. Carlos walked in with his usual relaxed demeanor. But when Felipe stepped inside, his gaze immediately locked onto mine. His presence changed the energy in the room. There was a quiet intensity, a magnetic pull I couldn't explain. Those deep brown eyes captivated me and refused to let go. In that moment, I had no idea how an ordinary day was about to unravel into something far beyond my control. Now I realize it all began with those eyes. Before the story continues, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. Your comments and likes mean so much, and there's more to come. As Carlos and Felipe began setting up the TV, I stood off to the side, observing them. Carlos, as always, was carefree and light-hearted, handling the setup with his usual energy. Felipe, however, was quiet and meticulous, working with precision. Yet every time our eyes met, I felt something unspoken pass between us. A tension I couldn't name, perhaps even a pull I was doing my best to ignore. I was still wearing the outfit I'd chosen earlier. A miniskirt that left my legs exposed, and a light blouse that flowed gently. I've always enjoyed dressing well and looking my best. But as I noticed Felipe's gaze linger on me, I became acutely aware of what I was wearing. That awareness sparked an excitement I tried to suppress. At one point, as Felipe handed me a cable, our hands accidentally brushed. We both pulled back instinctively, but for a fleeting moment, it felt as though a spark had passed between us. Felipe gave me a faint smile. "Sorry, that wasn't on purpose," he said in a calm, polite tone. But the subtle curve of his lips stirred something deep inside me. As the setup slowly progressed, I thanked them both warmly. "Thank you so much. Living alone, it's hard to handle things like this," I said. Felipe responded with a soft smile, his calm yet charismatic demeanor adding weight to his words. "Don't hesitate to call us for anything like this," he said, his voice sincere but layered with something more. Turning to Carlos, I added, "Once everything's set up, I'm inviting you both for the first movie night. You have to come." Carlos grinned immediately. "That sounds great. Movie nights are always fun," he said. Felipe simply nodded, offering a small smile. But the warmth in his eyes was focused entirely on me. "I'll make some coffee for you both. Take a break," I said, heading to the kitchen. As I started the coffee machine, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw Felipe standing in the doorway, his arms loosely folded across his chest. Although he hadn't stepped fully into the kitchen, his presence seemed to fill the entire room. His gaze lingered for a moment on the hem of my skirt and the soft fabric of my blouse as it skimmed my shoulders before quickly meeting my eyes again. The intensity in his look was impossible to ignore. "I just wanted to thank you," he said, his voice steady but carrying a subtle warmth. In that moment, I couldn't help but notice how striking he was. His broad shoulders, muscular arms, and the quiet confidence etched into his expression. His mere presence stirred something deep inside me. Smiling faintly, I replied, "There's no need to thank me. If anything, I've made more work for you by choosing such a massive TV." Felipe let out a soft chuckle and leaned casually against the table, his large hands gripping the edge as if staking his claim over the space. "You seem happy with your choice," he said, his eyes briefly scanning my figure before returning to my face. Adjusting my hair, I responded, "Yes. When you live alone, small joys like this become even more important." I could feel his steady gaze on me, almost like an unspoken compliment. It was both unsettling and strangely exhilarating. Then, his voice dipped slightly, taking on an intimate tone. "Loneliness isn't always bad," he said. "But when you have someone to share it with, everything feels more meaningful." The way he spoke made me realize he wasn't just making a casual observation. He was hinting at something deeper. My eyes couldn't help but drift to his broad shoulders and defined arms. He exuded a calm self-assurance that left me momentarily at a loss for words. Gripping the coffee mugs tightly, I tried to steady myself. "I suppose you're right," I replied, though the faint tremor in my voice betrayed me. Felipe straightened from his position against the table and took a step closer. Now, he was so near that I could feel the warmth of his breath. Looking directly into my eyes, he said, "If you ever want to test out this system, invite Carlos and me over." The words sounded casual, but the tone of his voice and the intensity in his gaze suggested much more. Just then, Carlos's voice called from the living room. "Felipe, can you pass me the cable?" Felipe hesitated for a moment before nodding slightly. "I'll be right there," he replied. But in those few seconds of pause, the charged energy between us filled the kitchen. When he finally turned to leave, his commanding presence lingered, leaving me to wrestle with the undeniable connection that moment had revealed. We all shared coffee together, chatting briefly before Felipe and Carlos finished setting up the system. I thanked them both sincerely. Carlos, ever the jokester, grinned. "Enjoy it, Auntie," he teased. Felipe, however, gave a polite smile and said, "If you need anything else, don't hesitate to let us know." As our eyes met one last time before they left, the tension between us remained fresh and unshakable. Once they were gone, a quiet settled over the house. The new TV and sound system stood prominently in front of me, but my thoughts remained fixed on Felipe. His calm yet magnetic demeanor, combined with his subtle gestures, continued to draw me in. Later, as I tidied up the coffee mugs in the kitchen, I noticed something on the table. A small flower and a folded piece of paper. My heart raced as I picked it up and opened the note. In Felipe's neat handwriting, it read, "If you ever need anything, you can call me." Beneath the message, he had written his phone number. This small yet thoughtful gesture sent my heart racing. That evening, I sat in front of the new TV with my phone in hand, staring at Felipe's number. Should I message him or simply let it go? My emotions swirled, threatening to overpower my logic. Finally, I gave in. My fingers hovered over the screen before typing out a short message. "Felipe, thank you for the flower you left today. That was very thoughtful. If you're free, would you like to join me for coffee or wine while we test the system?" The moment I hit send, my heart pounded so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. His response came quickly. My phone buzzed, and his message lit up the screen. "That's a wonderful idea, Mia. I'm bringing a bottle of wine over." When Felipe arrived at my door with a bottle of red wine in hand, his confidence left me speechless once again. The way he paid attention to small details and his thoughtful nature made him stand out even more. "A good wine is essential for a proper system test," he said, with a slight grin. As we raised our glasses, he added softly, "Only for special people." The depth in his eyes took my breath away. This man wasn't just kind. With every action, he seemed to fill a piece of the emptiness inside me. We turned on the TV and began testing the sound system. But the air between us was so charged that neither of us paid much attention to the music or the screen. Our conversation grew more personal, and as Felipe leaned slightly closer, the space between us seemed to disappear. Our body language, the eye contact, everything was becoming more intense. "Mia," Felipe said, his voice soft yet firm. "I didn't come here tonight just to try the wine. I want to get to know you better." His words brought all my feelings rushing to the surface. I couldn't look away from him. That moment made it clear that what was growing between us had shifted into something much deeper. What we decided to do with this connection was now entirely in our hands. Feeling the weight of his gaze, I slowly placed my wineglass on the table and stood. My fingers reached for the straps of my dress, and I heard his breath hitch. Taking a step toward him, I smiled gently and said, my voice trembling slightly, "If you truly want to know someone, getting closer is essential." As the straps of my dress slid off my shoulders and the fabric fell to the floor, I felt the undeniable pull between us take hold. I could see the admiration, blended with awe and undeniable attraction, in Felipe's eyes. For a moment, it felt like everything else in the room dissolved into silence. Time itself seemed to stand still, leaving just the two of us. His gaze lingered on me, filled with raw, unmistakable desire. Felipe moved closer, his steps deliberate and unhurried, bridging the space between us. As he neared, I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. "Mia," he said, his voice deep and steady. "The strength and confidence you carry make you even more captivating." My heart raced uncontrollably, but my expression remained composed. Tilting my head slightly, I locked eyes with him. "Ah, Felipe," I began, my voice calm and unwavering. Being here tonight wasn't just about trying wine. It was a decision, and I chose to know you better. Those words melted the tension completely. Felipe placed his hands on my waist, his movements strong yet assured, pulling me closer. His eyes held a depth I could lose myself in, like an endless ocean. Slowly, he leaned down, and when our lips finally met, the kiss was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Intense, genuine, and completely overwhelming. As his hands gently explored my body, an irresistible urge to let go of everything and give in to the moment took hold. My hands found their way to his strong shoulders, his warmth drawing me deeper into the present. There was no room for hesitation or second thoughts. This moment was everything. It wasn't just physical, it was the culmination of years of loneliness and longing finally being released. Felipe paused briefly, his eyes searching mine before turning toward the music system in the living room. Within seconds, a soft, romantic melody filled the space. The gentle rhythm of the music only heightened my excitement as I sank into the couch, completely surrendering to the moment. Something immense was stirring within me. The music's melody blended seamlessly with the sounds escaping my lips. Everything was happening so quickly, my nails unintentionally leaving marks on Felipe's back. It had been so long since I'd felt anything remotely like this, and my body responded with an intensity I could hardly control. My legs tensed, and my grip on the couch tightened. At one point, I opened my eyes briefly, glancing at the TV as the thought crossed my mind. This is the best purchase I've ever made. But I was so out of breath that no words came out. Felipe kept whispering how beautiful and utterly mesmerizing I was, his kisses never ceasing. The way he was so affected by me only fueled my own excitement. I looked at him, searching for the words to tell him how incredible he looked. His slightly damp hair and his broad, muscular physique were nothing short of perfection. Our moments together culminated with both of our bodies tensing simultaneously. As I lay there, overwhelmed by how compatible we felt in every way, Felipe had already moved to lie beside me. The peace and exhaustion of the night pulled me into a deep, restful sleep, unlike anything I'd experienced in years. As the first rays of morning crept into the room, I stirred and opened my eyes, only to find the spot next to me empty. The realization that Felipe wasn't there brought an unexpected unease. Sitting up quickly, I glanced around the room, searching for him. My gaze landed on the coffee table, where a single flower and a folded note sat, right next to my clothes scattered on the floor. My heart raced as I picked up the note and opened it to read. I want to take you somewhere special very soon. Last night was incredible, but it's only the beginning compared to what's ahead for us. I can't wait for what's next. As I read his words, a mix of warmth and curiosity washed over me. Holding the flower, I couldn't help but smile. Felipe had a way of surprising me at every turn. In that moment, I knew this was just the start of something extraordinary. A journey filled with emotions I had never encountered before. Yes, it had been that kind of night, but I could sense it was far from over. When I share what happened next, you're going to feel an incredible rush and lose yourself in the emotions all over again. Stay tuned for the continuation of this story. If you've come this far, you won't want to miss what happens next.